Hello, Internet. Christ is risen.
Truly, he is risen.
Yeah, indeed, truly, verily.
So, I don't know if you've ever experienced this before, but
I have not.
there's a lot of things that happen, right? People say like Christ is risen and everyone's got an opinion. But like our parish, the response is truly he is risen. Like that's our parish's culture.
It's in the bylaws.
It's in the bylaws. Yeah, exactly. You when you become a pledging member, you agree to say truly he is risen. But there are some members of our community who insist that it is not truly he is risen, and they will very loudly say "indeed" over the trulies. And so
Like
we hear this
competing
like,
with the Trulies.
yes, it's like battle of the
Schism.
bands.
Schism.
Yeah, no, it's right down the middle.
This is where bad Christology starts.
This is yes.
You know?
I just go for verily.
Yea, verily.
Yea, verily, he is risen.
Forsooth. I love that. Haziel's contribution in the Bronx, we say word up. And as a response, we say word. In fact, one of my buddies at seminary, who is now a priest, and his dad is also a priest. Apparently, when my friend was a teenager, he was giving like a Paschal sort of sermon, and I guess he was either I can't tell if he was trolling his son or being genuine about it. But at one point, he's like, Christ is risen, doing the thing in all the languages, or as the young people say, word up. And
that's
my
hilarious.
17-year-old friend was mortified.
But also was like, I get it. In German, it's Christus ist auferstanden, which I'm pretty sure I butchered that. But the direct like translation from that, from what I understand, is like he stood up. Which is, I don't know why it's funny to me, but it kind of is. But like someone who actually spoke German, I said, is that what that means? And they're like, yeah, but it's like means like he stood up in a way that no one has ever stood up before. It's just like, all right.
He stood up in a super unique way.
I think that's what we should start saying. Christ is standing up. Truly,
Indeed,
he is standing up.
Standing up in a super unique way that no one has ever done.
Look at him standing there.
On his own two legs.
I remember my first Christmas when Christ is born. I was like, truly he is born? What do I say to this?
Look, baby Jesus, he's right there.
Yeah. Indeed. Wow. The great thing though is like all of the calls and responses in that regard, I feel like are fairly interchangeable. Like you could say like hit me with one of the church greetings.
Like for different feast days, like Christ is baptized.
He is and never shall be.
I guess that works.
You know what I mean? Like it's like it's not wrong.
He's never going to not be baptized.
Or glorify him. Like you can do that for all of them.
This is like some sort of
Christ is circumcised.
Indeed. Verily.
Glorify him.
What you're doing essentially is it's like some sort of flash animation of just kind of like random input outputs and just kind of like making them work at different times.
Yeah, it works. They all work. They all fit together.
Let's make this app.
Yes.
This is our contribution to church life.
It's like the Magic 8-Ball app, but like you just throw in a random greeting and then it responds.
Shake, 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 shake. Yeah. Glorify him.
Yeah.
Shake, 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 shake. Maybe next time.
Yeah. Christ is risen. Maybe next time. I don't like that. I don't like that.
That either.
We should talk about different things now.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is why people don't like the beginning of our show.
No, I know. I've got people that love me who have said things to me like, I've been listening to your podcast for 15 minutes and I still don't care.
I think I know who you're talking about and love that person as well.
But he's not the only one. He's not the only one that said that to
No, it's
us.
true. Look, we never promised more than 13 people.
No.
13 listeners.
Oh, see, Monica cares. Thank you, Monica. It's good to know that there's people in this world with actual caring.
Who put up with our shenanigans.
Indeed. So what do we got going on?
Full of shenanigans.
Is there anything to report here?
Nothing terribly new. The online ministry is still going strong. Like, in most parts of the country and the world, things are still kind of like virtual. So y2am.org/at-home, still kind of home base for a lot of the live streams and videos and stuff like that. That's y2am.org/at-home. All sorts of pan-Orthodox stuff from like OCF and Yes and Ancient Faith Ministries all over the place. One kind of like bit of fun news is we're doing some Be the Bee episodes together.
We are. I'm so excited.
We've got a twofer, not one Christian Gonzalez, but two for the price of one.
Mm-hmm.
So next Monday,
fractals of Christian Gonzalez.
So it's Christians all the way down.
It is. It is.
So we've got two episodes coming up on building good habits. How to build healthy habits is going to be the first one, and then we're going to do one kind of on just like what health is, mental health, emotional health, because these have been kind of weird times for a lot of people. So look for that. What was that?
That was just one of the local TIE fighters flying overhead.
Oh, as a thank you to our nurses.
Yeah. The Imperial flyover.
To all our first responders.
Oh, and here come the rebels on their tauntauns.
It just sounds grumpy.
I thought they smelled bad on the outside. Sorry, that was a total accident.
No, it's fine. It was funny because I was very confused. But yes, we do. The Empire salutes our first responders. Yes. So yeah, y2am.org, new Be the Bee episodes. Look for that on Monday on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/y2am. Effective Christian Ministry. More parishes are getting on board, which is super cool. Like, this is the time to think about creative solutions to ministry challenges. Getting really good feedback from courses that are getting on it. If you want to get on the course, by the way, we're totally happy to create like parish specific coupon codes. The course by itself is like $75. It's not a lot. But there are individual parishes that kind of have their ministry teams that want to get on it. There are other dioceses and like continents that are getting on this course, honestly. It's doing a lot of good in a lot of places across the church. So effectivechristianministry.org, if you want to jump on with that.
Have we hit Antarctica yet? Has it made it to Antarctica?
There is a chapel on Antarctica, but I do not know if their ministry is effective.
Is it Christian at least?
It's an Orthodox chapel. Yeah.
My question stands.
This guy orthodoxes. Last bit of news. Summer camp obviously is not going to be happening the way that people had. So that's kind of one of the big projects that we've been thinking about at work, trying to come up with ways to think about like, what does summer camp look like if kids can't go somewhere and sleep away, right? So we've had this committee that's been working on like virtual camp resources. There's a lot of vacation Bible schools out there that are probably going to need to make use of these resources as well, because things are going to still be closed and virtual into July, probably, it looks like. So stay tuned about that. We're going to put together a landing page at some point when we come up with some of those resources. That'll be on youtube.com, not youtube.com, y2am.org. That'll be on y2am.org, our main site. That's the big updates that I got. What else do you got, Christian?
That's pretty much it. I think all around, still going strong with Wandering the Desert. Kind of on a little hiatus for We Are Orthodoxy for now, but we're, just trucking along, and Arizona's opening back up again, and that is not in any way freaking me out a little bit.
How do you feel about that, Christian?
I am very, very not freaked out whatsoever. Can't you hear how calm I sound? Listen to how calm I am. I can't believe it. I'm radiating calmness.
Look, radiating calmness.
Look how much I have it together.
And this is why we're doing some Be the Bee episodes about mental and emotional health. Yeah, man. I mean, we're nowhere close to in New York. Like, New York is still very much under pause, although people are like still hanging out, especially when the weather's nice. Like, you can see the sun is shining and people are. I haven't taken my walk yet, but when I go outside, I'm sure that I will see packs of people coughing
It's
on
funny
each
that
other.
you and I live in places that are never like nice at the same time.
Mm.
You know, like now
It's
it's
true.
getting nice over where you are, and here, although today is perfect. It's hard to like. It's just a perfect day today. It was like 70 when I walked outside, and it's going to be like 90, high of 90 today.
Wow, that's pool weather.
Dude, that is all the weather. That's like you can do all kinds of things out in that weather. You can ride a bike. It's still a little sweaty, but like you can do everything. We have bikes now. Okay, don't sass me, all right?
I'm gonna menacingly point at you.
All right. Shall we get to it?
Yes. Now that we've reached like sassy territory, let's rein it in. Let's rein it in. Christian, what are we doing this week on this this fun Silly Willy podcast that we do?
On this fun Silly Willy podcast, we are doing the fantastic Mr. Fox, which is a movie that came out like I don't know, geez, man, close to 10 years ago. I don't know.
Yeah. So it's in that gray area. Like, do we dare unleash the spoiler porg? Is it old enough that there's no spoilers, or is it new enough that there are spoilers? Like,
I think when in doubt, you got to let the porg out.
I agree. Let that porg flag fry. I said fry.
You've been porged.
There it is. Boom, porged.
Boom. How do you like me now?
How do you like them porgs? So yeah, this is our homework. If you guys notice, like if you're not in the chat, obviously with us today, we post the homework in the description when we post it on YouTube, because it'll come out like the day after on YouTube, and then we'll tweet it out or whatever it is when our next homework is, just so you stay on top of it. But yeah, fantastic, Mr. Fox. How would you like to begin, Mr. Gonzalez?
Well, why don't you skip your opinion and give me just the facts, man. Just the facts. What is the general gist?
You're sassing me.
Of the fox, who is a fantastic male.
I don't like your sass either. I feel this is insubordinate and churlish, and I don't like it.
Well,
but as a person who is...
Well, I'm sorry.
I'll be humble and obedient to your unreasonable demands.
I will take the high ground and be humble.
It's not a big deal. I'm slightly more humble than you are. So what is Fantastic Mr. Fox about? It is based on a Roald Dahl book. So if there is some like bizarreness to it, you can probably figure that out from the author of James and the Giant Peach. I've never read the book, but I would imagine if Roald Dahl wrote it, it's got some fun weirdness to it. But long story short, you've got a Mr. Fox who is indeed fantastic, as the title tells us. In his old life, he would steal chickens, as foxes are wont to do. But he is married. He actually learns that his wife is pregnant as they were captured trying to steal some chickens at the very beginning of the movie. She asks him to promise that he will stop doing this because she is, of course, pregnant. They need some safety and security in their lives. They've got to raise a young little cub. So she wants him to put this dangerous past aside. He does. He promises. He becomes a newspaper man, writing a mediocre column that he's convinced no one reads, and he's constantly like making self-deprecating jokes about himself, which is very funny. But as his son gets to the point where he's about 12 in Fox years, Fox gets this itch, and he wants to do one last heist, which is actually 3 heists in one. And in typical Wes Anderson fashion, because this is a Wes Anderson movie, the heist does not go as planned, and hijinks ensue.
So many hijinks.
So many hijinks. How's that?
Mm-hmm. Yep, nailed it.
Okay. So why don't you tell us what you thought about this? Does the Fantastic Mr. Fox live up to the name?
1000%. I absolutely love this movie. It's actually probably one of my favorites of all time. It's probably at least in my top 10 for sure. Top 5, it probably could get up there, but I love this movie. I also just love Wes Anderson in general. My wife and I have been going on a Wes Anderson kick lately. We watched pretty much, we've made it through everything except for Royal Tenenbaums and Rushmore. Like those are the only ones that we haven't watched yet. But because she's seen Royal Tenenbaums before, and but she'd never seen Darjeeling Limited, I had never seen the Grand Budapest Hotel. So we just went back, and that is a good one. Yeah, it was a really good one. But dude, I'm loving getting to rewatch. I just watched Isle of Dogs again recently. Have you seen that one?
I haven't seen that one yet.
Dude, that one's really good too.
Yeah.
It's hilarious. Yeah, it's really funny. But I just love everything that he does. I think his movies are funny, they're touching, they're beautiful. Yeah, I just love, and this movie in particular, I think kind of is the perfect format for just like some of the questions that Wes Anderson asks in pretty much all of his movies. Um, some of the things that he struggles with. I feel like this movie was like it's just a gem, just a gem of a movie.
Yeah.
You know, even just the way that he approaches, like, are you cussing with me? Like, this is a real cluster cuss.
Yeah.
Like that kind of stuff is just, it's like, oh, it's just so perfectly executed.
Mhm.
But yeah, that's what I think about it. I couldn't rave more about this movie if I, you could give me all day and I would never shut up. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I really like this movie. I would probably put this in my top 10 or 15 movies as well. It's really good. I like Wes Anderson. I haven't seen all of his stuff. Obviously I haven't seen Isle of Dogs. But I think like the claymation style is just perfect for his quirkiness. Because like you watch it and they're so stylized, and he's got kind of like this very Wes Anderson aesthetic. Like he is a genre unto himself, and
Yes, absolutely.
at least aesthetically, right? Like it makes so much more sense when it's done in this very stylized, like, puppet kind of style. So it's good. It's good. It's a fun movie with a lot of heart, and it's just quirky and it's silly, and sometimes it's just like it's super silly, like when the possum has his weird like little crazy eyes and he's like zoning out. Like they're dumb jokes and they're like really subtle jokes, and I'm really glad we got to watch this again. This is a good one.
Yeah, it's so good. It's his style. Have you seen, by the way, Saturday Night Live did like a Wes Anderson horror film?
No.
Yeah, there's a trailer on there where
Oh no.
Edward Norton plays Owen Wilson, and like it's like, and Alec Baldwin is narrating it. It's like the midnight courtier of murderers or whatever like that. It's just hilarious. Like Owen Wilson looks out a window and he's like, "Oh wow, hey honey, there's a murderer out on our. There's a man with a chainsaw on our lawn. He's got an old record player. He's got
A typewriter."
yeah." And then exactly, it cuts to the murderer and he's standing at the chainsaw, and it's like, he's just like waving at them. Sends a letter. Dear homeowners, may we kill you? The murderers. Dear murderers, no, you may not. Signed, the homeowners.
Okay, I got to watch that.
It's hilarious.
You must have seen. I think you've seen this. I think we've talked about this before. Screen Rant, that YouTube channel that does honest trailers. Have you ever seen the honest trailer of every Wes Anderson movie?
I'm sure that I have. Yeah, I'm sure that I have.
I watched this again yesterday after watching Fantastic Mr. Fox again, and that's like, again, I very much enjoy Wes Anderson, but it's very funny, like, symmetrical shots, whip pans, Bill Murray, motorcycles, Bill Murray riding a motorcycle, and like he'd be kind of, Ed Norton, typewriters, uniforms, Ed Norton typing on a typewriter while wearing a uniform. It's great. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. But where should we begin? Because there's a lot to dig into this movie. It's got a lot of heart. It's a lot of warmth.
Yes. Well, I think that it's kind of, even we're already there, like talking about him as this genre.
Unto himself,
unto himself, right? Because there is this like artistic sensibility that he really has that is unique to him. And I mean, you wouldn't even need to be told that it was a Wes Anderson movie, right? Like you just walk in and be like, oh, this is a Wes Anderson movie. Like you would just, if you've seen one of his movies, you would absolutely be able to identify any other of his movies.
The colors, the camera styles, the cast. Everything. I mean, so much of the cast is repeats from movie to movie.
Yeah, which is a thing that I really love, like the idea of working with an ensemble, like these people really getting to know each other, and being able to play with each other really well. Like I love that he uses the same actors. But one of the things that I so appreciate about Wes Anderson's films, I think, is the immense amount of deliberation he takes in crafting exactly what he wants the movie to look like, and in crafting exactly what he wants each frame to look like. And I think you see that in particular in this movie, where even just like from shot to shot, right? Like the fox's hairs are moved and they're like intentionally placed in different ways, to maybe make it look like the wind is blowing. There's just so many things that are done with such intentionality, that it's so fascinating for me to watch, just from like even that kind of perspective, right? Like watching him craft a piece of art. I really do appreciate how much precision and care he takes in making films. And I feel like, I don't know, I feel like there's something to that for us. Like I wish that I had the same kind of approach to like my work and to my life, like instead of just kind of feeling like I haphazardly kind of go through stuff, and like, oh, I just got to get this thing done. Like I can't imagine him doing that with his movies. It's just like, let's just crank it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's totally fair. I hear that. For me personally, I think I feel that I hear that more on a personal level than on a professional level. Mm-hmm. Like I feel like I have the same level, or at least I aspire to have the same level of like persnicketiness and intentionality when it comes to work stuff. But I also tend to wrap my identity up in work stuff more than I do other things. So like we're putting together, Be the Bee episodes for next week, and it's like just revisiting the draft again and again. And like every sort of like word needs to be sort of like carefully chosen. There's no freestyling it. It's kind of like the script has to be there. Everything we do, like retreat, the effective Christian ministry course, like every detail is sort of thought through. And I feel like it's interesting because I put so much intentionality into that. And then like life, like just personal life sometimes feels like it's this blur. Like there's intentionality that goes into like work stuff, which rubs people the wrong way too. Cause I feel like, especially in ministry, when you have like, you can be difficult sometimes when you have kind of like very clear ideas and visions and standards and don't want to do things that don't live up to that can rub people the wrong way. But then like on a personal level, there's, I feel like I make excuses for myself when it comes to taking time to be still or taking time to pray or whatever it is. But if it's a work project, like I'm going to Wes Anderson the heck out of it. That's my experience of myself anyway. Like spheres of intentionality. But I wish I had that like on a personal level too.
Me too. Yeah, I think that like that's primarily what I think what I mean is like that moment by moment. Like I don't feel like there's a kind of even just like intentionality to like, even though there might be this kind of like crafting like the work thing. Like for me, like my relationship with work is like a really interesting one. Because I think I often like leave having created something kind of feeling like a little bit of an ache, like it's really like laborious for me. Like not in the sense of like, this is so hard, like, oh, it's so much work, but like there's this like anguish that goes into it because of like, so like feeling like there's a right way to do it. Like, and I have it's the same kind of experience I have even when I go to a restaurant. Do you remember restaurants? Those are places where you used to go and sit in public places with other human beings who have full bodies and aren't just heads on screens. And you would go and you sit with them, restaurants, and they would bring you food. Other people would bring you food.
They would touch the food?
No, they wouldn't touch the food. They would touch the plates that the food was on. So they
would touch the plates?
They would underneath.
Okay.
And then they would put it in front of you, and you would use forks that other people had also put in their mouths.
What? Wait.
But they were washed.
So they would they use like some sort of extender device to make sure that they were 6 feet away from you while they were placing the plate in front of you?
No, this is what's crazy. Sometimes they would even kind of like kneel down and get face to face with you to talk to you about what you wanted.
What?
And then they would take your drink away with their bare hands, and then
no gloves?
No gloves.
No hands. Masks?
They would put no masks. They would put more liquid in there for you to drink, ostensibly even in the same cup sometimes. What they also would do is they would bring pitchers out and pour that into your cup and then pour it into somebody else's cup. And then, yeah, that's a thing. It's a thing.
Whoa. I can't even imagine that.
I know. It was a there were more primitive times for sure.
We've come a long way.
We've come a long way. We're very advanced as a society and a culture now. So I know it's hard to imagine what the people of yesteryear used to do, but we've grown a lot as a race, as a species. We've grown a lot as in the last 8 weeks. It's just
back in my day,
the advancement of society in a short 8 weeks. But anyway, when I go to restaurants, the whole point of that was like I have this almost like the same experience with, or like looking at a menu. Like for me, the question is, what's like, am I going to make the wrong choice? Like I feel almost like, oh, I'm going to get this wrong. Like there's like a right and a wrongness to it. Yeah, that I feel, and I think the same thing happens with my work and like all of that kind of stuff. That I almost just like it almost is such a like pressure that it almost causes like this like weird stagnation, because it's just like it's almost just like so overwhelming to like the thought about like getting it wrong. Like I remember, I don't know if I've told you this, but when I wrote my senior thesis at Luther on like this kind of martyric vision of youth ministry or whatever, I left off the very last period on my paper. Did I tell you this? When I turned it in, I went back and I had spent months laboring over this thing. I don't know if you remember that, but like I was like,
yes,
I was just like, man, I was driving myself crazy with the thing. I
do remember that. I finally
turned it in, and then I didn't even procrastinate on the thing. I was working on it for forever, and I turned it in at the last minute though, because I wanted to work as hard on it as I possibly could. And then I went back and reread it again like a schmuck, and saw that the last period was left off the paper. And I had this like, I know. And for days, Steve, I could not stop thinking about that one paper, that one period that I left off. Whoa. Mind you, when I got my grade back, I got a 59 out of 60 on the paper. Right? So I got like a very high score on the thing. And you know what I lost that 1 point for?
The period?
Grammar and punctuation. Mind you, this movie won, or this paper that I wrote won a cash prize and is immortalized on the Luther Seminary website as like a paper that people should aspire to write. And you know what I see when I look at that?
A missing period.
I see a missing period. I don't like, and that's the weight of what work feels like for me. Is like I don't ever see just like how my craft has like become something beautiful or good or whatever. Like I look at it and I'm just like, this is still like garbage.
Just the faults.
Yeah, totally.
Oh man. Totally.
So I think that for me, there is like totally. There is some time where I'm just like, just like, let's just get it out of here because it's going to drive me crazy. It's going to kill me.
Just knock this one out.
Almost this hyper intentionality, of like, I got to be perfect. I can't mess it up.
Yeah.
Bad. It was bad. My wife will corroborate my story here and be like, yeah, he was pretty spun out about that stupid period for several days.
Man, oh man.
Yep.
Yeah. Because your work is very, very good. Your work is very, very good.
But very good is not good enough. Perfect.
That is a hard lesson to learn. Yeah. Because remember, like we talked about this even with work, that video that Hank Green made, that 80% video, right? Which is something that I've tried to like focus on. So one of the Vlog brothers, who are just kind of like really, they do great internet stuff. And one of them, Hank Green, talks about like the process of making his first video ever, and how it just never felt right. It never felt perfect. And he kept dragging his feet. And at some point he realized like, it's never going to be perfect, but 80% is good. And next week when I do it again, my 80% will be that much better because I've got that much more experience, and your 80% will grow. And like, that totally makes sense, right? On an intellectual level, but on an emotional sort of like felt level, like yeah. Period. Punctuation.
I needed a 60 out of 60. Christian, we really love your
Substantively.
paper. I don't care what you think about it. I don't care what you think about it.
That's hard. That's hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you like shift your direction away from that and kind of?
Well, but I think like this is where it gets into the like with some of the stuff you're saying about like the intentionality of treating our life kind of like this work of art, right?
Mm,
Where like we have to recognize that like that's actually like that's defective, right? Like that's a defective way of being. Like so maybe I approach work that way or I feel that way or whatever it might be, but that's not what I meant for. And
mm,
so like I have to like I can't just like I'm this way at work but not this way in my life, because the reality is like it's all just one life, you
true.
know, like it's all part of the whole. And I think this, you know, so my daughter's school like really focuses on the cultivation of the good, the beautiful, and the true, and learning to seek those, right? To like go looking for the good, the beautiful, and the true. And we are so just like inclined toward these kind of automated ways of being,
Mm,
right? That like when we go into that hyper intentionality over work, but this kind of lethargy toward the rest of our lives, that's actually an automated way of being. Like
mm,
that's life on autopilot. That's not intentionality.
yeah.
That's so it may feel like we're being really like, well, I'm really focused at work, but the kind of intentionality that I think it takes is a little bit different. Um, and I'm not exactly sure like what that looks like, but I mean, even just in my life, like I realize like how automated just so many of my ways of being are, you know, like how I interact with my children, how I interact with my wife. Like I've realized how many times I talk to my wife without looking at her,
Mm,
you know, just like da 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 da. And so lately I've been trying to just like, okay, like I'm gonna like look at you when I'm talking to you and realize, oh, like this is my wife whom I love, and like I'm talking to her face to face, and I'm seeing her eye to eye, you know, or like just how much I just might like pat my children on the head versus like hugging them really tight, you
yeah.
know, and intentionally. Um, or like how much easier it is to do that with like the baby, to squeeze her and hold her because she's new and I'm not used to her yet in some way,
Mm,
right? Like she's always kind of doing something new. Whereas like Ava and Elena, like I've kind of automated them a little bit, right? Like they do a thing, and I do another thing back, and like that's just kind of how we interact. Instead of going like, oh, like I once like looked at you and held you the same way that like I look at and hold this new baby, you
mm,
know, and I don't look at you and hold you that same way anymore, and that's not fair. Like it's really not fair because your value and your worth hasn't changed. But so I think it has to be this kind of like ongoing intentionality of how we approach things. Same with even our prayers. Like, you know, I think that one of the things that I've been trying to do, like when I remember to say my prayers, or like when I have the energy or the time or what, like whatever excuse I'm gonna make, but like when I do say my prayers, to like not just, you know, holy God, holy mighty, holy immortal, have mercy on us. Holy God, holy mighty, holy immortal, but like just to slow down,
mm,
and not even necessarily to try to pay attention, because I feel like that's like even that makes things harder and more difficult. But I can choose my pace, right? Like one of the things that I've felt too, like especially when, you know, I've talked with people who are like giving speeches or something like that, and they come across like some part that they really want to land, like they're like I really want, but they speed up for it because they get emotional,
yeah.
and they try to like get through it really quick and just like say the thing that like I'm like
Yeah.
slow down with it and let yourself, if you want it to land but like it's making you emotional, like you have to slow down,
Yeah.
because it's got to land with you first if you want it to land with anybody else.
Yeah.
And it does, like it's just amazing. And I do the same thing like in my therapy room. Like sometimes I will very much just slow the way that I talk to people, and it changes dramatically how they feel,
Mm,
because it takes it from this kind of like automated whatever into this like, oh, something's resonating on a deeper level now with me, just because someone is slowing down, they're looking at me, talking at, and they're kind of using like that hushed soothing voice, and it almost makes you a little emotional just hearing it. You're like, something's happening. Like,
yeah.
oh, you know.
Yeah.
But
You're being
I
present
do
for
think that
something.
it's, yeah, yeah, So I don't know. I mean, I don't exactly know what it looks like, but you
Yeah.
can't stumble upon it. That's what I know. Is you can't. It
Yeah.
doesn't happen by accident.
Yeah. And like we've talked about this before, right? Because, Father Alexander Schmemann in Great Lent, like this is one of the kind of three principles that he sets forward for really like making the most of Great Lent. Um, if you're really going to get into the spirit of the fasting and the prayer and so forth, one of the bits of guidance that he offers is to be intentional about the rhythms and relationships of your life. Because there are so many times, right? Like even in a physical sense, you're not conscious as you drive to work or walk to the subway or whatever it is. And then you kind of come back to yourself and suddenly you're in the office and like you're like not aware, like you just kind of drive to the store on autopilot,
Mhm.
right? Or you have these interactions with people on autopilot. And I think again, not to belabor it because we've kind of touched on this before too, I think there's something interesting about the fact that all of this unsettling of our routines has happened, started during Lent, which is supposed to be, like, because it's hard to do it all the time, to constantly be in this like introspective mode. But at the very least, like once a year, the church is inviting us to sort of like pause and change the rhythm a little bit, right? Like every year, have that tune up, kind of a spiritual tune up, whatever you want to call it. Um,
I love
and
tuna.
and and this year, spiritual tuna, noetic tuna.
Mm. Oh.
um,
Sorry, I
they
interrupted you. That was rude.
No, it's fine. It's fine. It was funny. It was funnier than what I was saying. But like, yeah, I don't know. I think that there's again, that's kind of like looking at this as a blessing. Like that's kind of the reason why some of this has happened, because you're locked underneath, you're talking about kind of relationships with people, and now you're locked under this one roof, right, with these people, and you can either keep going through the motions or you can like pause to actually like be intentional. And me, with like the way that I use my time and how much of my time is like going towards work, right? Like I'm not traveling, like I'm saving 2 hours of a day on a commute, and yet I still don't make time for saying my prayers, and I still don't make time for playing the guitar or reading a book or just doing something that's going to be personally cultivating, because I have this like, I don't know, guilt about doing something for myself, right? Like I'd rather produce and sort of like project outward than do this thing for myself. Even though like there's no reason not to. Like I have two found hours a day as compared to the beginning of this pandemic, right? But it's hard to like, it's
More
hard
if you
to.
think about it, because you also don't have to get ready for work. Like
True.
it's probably a solid 3 hours
Yeah,
of
I haven't
time that
showered in
you
4 days. This is crazy.
I know, I haven't taken my daily shower since last week.
I jest. Well, I could not shower. But anyway, but you're right. You're right. Like there's all this, just being real, just being transparent.
No, I could.
Once a day,
I'll corroborate that. I'll vouch for that. Yeah.
sometimes twice a day, just because.
Yeah.
Um,
Not 3 for the Trinity.
well,
Just 2 for the natures of Christ.
I mean, now that it's less dry outside, like in the wintertime, that's hard to do 3 a day. But now that it's like more humid outside, you're not drying the skin.
This is my human shower. This is my divine shower.
I wash with water. I wash with spirit.
Yeah. I totally thought you were going to say blood.
Steve's revealed a lot about his private life in this episode. He may be a vampire.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's just like, there's so much of our life that's on autopilot, and this is one of the, as now we're thinking about like states are getting out of this, right? Like, Arizona's getting ready, and New York at some point in the next month or two, we'll see. But it's like, man, I've had two months of this, and I can't feel but a little bit of shame or a little bit of guilt that like I have not used these 3 hours a day of found time. Like, what am I doing? I'm still going through the motions, and I'm still like, well, I'm really working hard for the ministry stuff, but how about taking 5 minutes to talk to the Lord? Like, no, I've got a script to write. And you're right. It's like the illusion of intentionality, right? It's kind of a curated self, because it's this thing that we're projecting, that, me personally projecting outward, as opposed to, you're doing this thing because no one's watching. You're doing this thing because like, it's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is, we got there from Wes Anderson, but we got there from Wes Anderson.
Yeah, it's true. But and I think this brings out in some ways kind of like this, one of the ongoing themes of the movie, right, is this idea of like the nature of things versus like transcending the nature of those things.
Mm.
So it's kind of what we're talking about now is like our natural mode, right, which is to automate things. And actually there's nothing necessarily wrong with automated responses to life. We can't be intentional about everything, right? Like
it's exhausting.
It would totally, our brains they literally would fry if we had to think through every single thing that we do. For example, like your home is automated, which is why you can pretty much find your way around it in the dark. Your sitting down in a chair is automated. Like these are just things that we don't have to learn or think through every time. We don't, riding a bike, automated. Like you don't have to even think about it. You just do it. And thank God. The problem is when often like people and all those things get automated as well. And that's where we need to kind of bring that back into our awareness. But when we first are meeting people, like we're not automated. It's kind of crazy. But what we're talking about now is like, if there's ever going to be growth, then that intentionality is what's going to pull us kind of beyond our nature, beyond the automated responses and beyond kind of maybe just what our most base programming as biological creatures is. And it actually changes us into these spiritual beings as well.
Yeah.
Right. And that's why I think, to me, that's one of the most apparent themes in this movie, is just this idea that they continually come back to, of them being wild animals. Like which is to me one of the funniest things, right? Because you're watching this like totally dignified creature who's like very just eloquent and
charming and
charming, clever, smart, all of this kind of stuff. And then he sits down for breakfast and he's just like, and then he just leaves the thing a mess.
Yeah. But his wife takes the plate away.
Yes. Yes.
Which is like the juxtaposition of that is so wonderful, right? Like his wife makes pancakes, serves the pancake on this kind of like porcelain dish. He devours the pancakes with crumbs all over the place, and then he walks away very dignified, and she comes and takes the plate, and like the mess is still everywhere. Like,
it's just brilliant. So like this is, I think, one of the, or when he and Badger get into a fight in Badger's law office, right? Like, I mean, they're lawyers, they're columnists, they're trying to play sports, they're professionals. Yeah. But when it comes down to it, they have these base animal instincts that they can't repress or deny, or what, I don't know exactly what the true point of all of that is. But I wonder about even that for us, right? Like Fox uses this, like, I'm a wild animal. Like he uses that to justify the fact that he can't stop stealing chickens, right? That's just part of his nature. It's wild. It's wild, kind of like this nature versus like curated self, kind of, that you're talking about in some ways. There's just I don't know. There's a question to it,
right? Because the question can go one of two ways. Like the question can be, are we creating a false curated self that is masking what is true, right? Like is Fox essentially a wild animal, and that's really who he is, right? And all of these kind of trappings of civilization are false, and he really does need to go and like get back into hunting and killing these animals because that's just who he is, and the rest of this is false. Or this is something we've talked about before, in episodes of Be the Bee and other places, like this kind of sense of second nature. Right. To what extent is there kind of like, this base biological nature, you said, right? But this kind of like transcending of the self and this putting on of kind of a new nature, which is ultimately like, in terms of our sense of what it is to be a human being, right? In terms of like our sense of what it is, like our anthropology, like that's what the church tells us. Like you are born as a biological being, but you're not fully human yet. Like humanity, like true humanity, is this kind of second nature that you need to put on top of your old sort of dead nature. It's not like you're fundamentally a wild animal and the rest is a contrivance. It's like, our kind of base human instincts are actually the ones that are false and that are contrived. And there's something new and better that is given to us when we can actually like sink into this different thing, this assumption of a different sort of nature, which is, the nature of baptism, the nature of like our kind of like ascetic life as we try to learn new ways of being to actually put them into practice. Because I think that's like, you know, because we have this question of like authenticity, right? What is the real self? And because we have all this pressure about authenticity, like, you know, how you frame the question can lead you into this sense of like poser guilt. You know, like the fox with the suit is posing and he's like, the truth of him is the wild animal. Or it can lead to this sense of transcendence, like the fox who wears the suit, who's a family man, who cares about other beings and is not just this kind of like instinctual wild animal. You know, he's not posing, he's actually sort of like transcending. And I feel like as a culture, because we have these weird, complicated thoughts about like where the authentic self is and what is, you know, truth and reality and so forth, like we can be very double-minded, I think, sometimes when it comes to that. And it can feel like church is inauthentic. It can feel like we're lying, especially sometimes if we're struggling with like a temptation, right? Or kind of an addiction or things that we kind of keep quiet. Like, is that really the real me? The one who, you know, snaps at people, the one who whatever? Or is the real me this me that I'm being called to be?
Yeah. Yeah. Even, you know, you're the way that you're talking about this too, right? Like that we are born by, like, as biological creatures, we're born into this biological existence. Zazoulis, you know, love him or hate him, like the way that he talks about it. And I always really loved this idea where he says, like what you just said, we're born as biological. And then in baptism, we become ecclesiological beings. So like our being is no longer wrapped up in biology, but is wrapped up in the very being of the church, right? Like it's wrapped up in the very body of Christ. Like that's the source of everything that we are. But yeah, I mean, really, it's like the Bohemians and like Freud and like the Beats that we have to thank for this idea of authenticity kind of being our modern kind of our modern iteration of what we think that it is, right? And I think that this is what this movie maybe explores a little bit, is that it's that who we are is basically our id, right? Like that the id is this kind of part of the psyche that Freud kind of talks about, is like housing all of the most destructive and just base desires that we have, basically to, you know, to eat and procreate and defecate wherever we want. Like that's essentially what the id is for, right? But then as we become, you know, as we grow up in a culture where there's this kind of cultural superego that it gets imposed upon the id and tries to squish the id and repress it. And to the extent to which our id is repressed, he says we're neurotic, right? Like that's the idea. And so liberation kind of happens when we're able to kind of act more out of our id than otherwise, right? To get to tap the id and to recognize those repressed impulses and those repressed desires. And this is why dreams are so important in the Freudian mind. And like there's so much that goes into like tapping into the repressed id. And the Bohemians and the Beats, they come across that and they're like, this is what it means to like be human. And this is why we use like drugs to like begin to open our minds to like this new way of seeing things, because we've been repressed for so long by these cultural super parents, right? Like
reduce inhibitions, kind of let these desires come out.
We've been in especially like in the 60s, you see all of that explode, right? Where like we're not going to be conformist anymore because that's just part of the machine. And like
it's phony, right? That Holden Caulfield, like it's phony.
Yeah, exactly. And in some ways, right, like the children of the 60s weren't wrong to like say some of the stuff that they said, but to kind of go beyond that into what you start seeing like in San Francisco and at Woodstock, just this kind of like sex, drugs, and rock and roll thing. Like when society, and they, you know, preaching like the free love, it's like the time of like more social upheaval and like sexual violence than like ever, you know? I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy. But like to somehow suggest that that is truly our nature, that's scary. You know, like, I mean, if that's really who I am at a foundational level, like that's terrifying. And I wonder, like, I'm just now kind of putting this together, like throughout the movie, right, Fox is afraid of wolves. It's like, wolf, did you say a wolf? And I wonder if it's because that is just the, like they are, when you meet the wolf, it represents just this predatorial instinct, right? Like that there's this like kind of unrepressed id, and he's got his own kind of like id struggles or id things that are going on. that leak out. But for the wolf is just a predator. He's on all fours. He's not standing upright when they meet him at the very end. Remember that? But
Yeah,
there's almost
yeah.
this like weird and there's this respect that he has for just for how terrifying of a creature it is. And I wonder, like, do we kind of even feel that way about our own passions? Like, are we scared of them? Like, am I making any sense right now, or am I just rambling?
No, you are totally right. I think that's a really good read of the wolf character, right? To the extent we can call it he does make that cameo towards the end. I think it's interesting that, you know, the wolf comes up a couple of times. Normally when the opossum would mention wolf, right? And that's always when Fox is like, wolf, what wolf, right? He freaks out.
Where wolf? Yeah.
And the moment that he confronts the wolf face to face and is not afraid, but actually sort of like raises his fist in this weird sort of solidarity, right? Is as he's on his way for the go for broke suicide mission. Right? It's like the Fox is actually not behaving in that sort of way. Like he's actually like, he's kind of put behind this idness, and he's sublimated it into like, I'm no longer living for myself, but I'm living for somebody else. Like I'm actually willing to die to save Christopherson. And that's when he kind of comes to term with this like base thing. And it's not about repressing it, right? It's not being ashamed about it. It's kind of like about transcending it. It's this like this new authentic Mr. Fox that takes the place of the animal. And like the new authentic Mr. Fox is what saves his nephew, is what saves his family, is what allows this kind of like, you know, the third act when everybody kind of like eats and feasts and is joyous, right? Because he's no longer just in it for himself. He's no longer just the chicken craving carnivore. That's cool. Because for a while, right? Like, because these, I think there's layers to this, right? Because you were talking about like the beats, and you're talking about like that whole sort of culture, and I think the complexity that comes into it, right, is I think sometimes we oversimplify. You know, is it what is within that is authentic, or is it the culture that's authentic? And like, just because culture is culture doesn't make it true. Right? Like, I think we can have a critique, especially as Christians, we can have a critique about like the dominant culture, you know, as like the beats are responding to kind of like overly repressed Victorian sort of like prim and proper, you know, early first half of the 20th century, like nuclear family, like there's kind of an artificiality of that culture. Like you can critique the culture without saying you have to sort of like embrace the animal within, and that all you are is this animal. Like there's this third way, like we can, you know, as Christians, we can critique the culture, we can embrace what is good about the culture, but also realize that there is something beyond. And you see that, I think, in the character of Mr. Fox, as he lives for others at the end and is actually willing to sacrifice himself for others. And that's when Fox gets fantastic, right? That's when Stella gets her groove back. That's when whatever other cliche you want to add, right? But it's more than this kind of like, it's more than this binary between the id and the superego, right? Like there's like this third way, like the cross can sort of like judge the desires of the id, and the cross can judge the sort of contrivances of the superego, and actually like help you to transcend the id in a way that is like, it's true, right? Because again, just because culture is out there doesn't, like you said, the Beats had a point about some of their critiques.
Yeah.
You know, it's not just either or. Like sometimes the animal desire within can be wrong, and the kind of like superficial culture can be wrong. Right. And I think like maybe the thesis that the movie is offering is like this sacrificial sort of love that allows you to not fear the wolf anymore, because you've actually like, you've transcended it, and you're no longer living a biological life which is ruled by fear, right? Because if all you are is matter, the worst thing that can happen to you is death. If all you are is biology.
You know, and this is interesting to me too, because so my wife and I have been reading through, like we've been trying to read through the Bible. So we're in chapter like 40 of Genesis or something like that. And we've been just like shocked, kind of, in even just going through like the Genesis accounts of like, you know, Jacob having having a couple wives, and like, which I knew, like, you know, that like Leah and Rachel obviously are like there, but I for some reason in my mind, like I thought that all of Joseph's sons except for all of Jacob's sons except for Joseph and Benjamin came from Leah. But you begin to realize, like I was realizing, like, oh my gosh, it was like 2 or 3 handmaidens as well that he stooped in order to like, you know, like get these, and like no one's offended by that. You know what I mean? Like nobody's
Yeah.
nobody's bothered by this. Or like Abraham, you know, when he also the way the Bible puts it, like the Bible language is, we can't help but laugh every time it like says, and so I'm not even going to say it because
Yes, I know what you're going to say though. Yeah.
I feel
Yeah.
silly.
Yeah.
And like, but it's
and
in the
Ishmael
Bible,
comes
so
around. Yeah.
yes, exactly. But and no one's like bothered by this. In fact, everyone's like, cool, it's great. You know, like Sarah's like, yeah, go have sex with my husband, and like,
Yeah.
and
You need an
everyone's
heir.
okay with it. Yeah, and everyone's okay with it. And we're like, how is that a thing then and not now? Not like we want it to be now, but like, how did that change? And I think I'm just now kind of putting like all of these thoughts together because I've heard people say things like, you know, like sex is just sex, and it's like we're biological creatures and we're da 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 da. And on one level, like I don't think that that's wrong. Like yeah, like I think from a biological level, the purpose of it is to like to grow the species.
Yeah.
So like it would make sense that like men would have this kind of urging toward like propagation and like continuing the species in some way, and you know, spreading their wild oats and all of this kind of stuff. But then the ascetic call becomes to transcend our nature,
Yeah.
and to choose fidelity, because that's God, right? Like God is faithful to Israel, God is faithful to his people, he's faithful to the church, and yet we're the ones who are the problematic ones, right? This is the whole story of Hosea. Like when the Lord tells Hosea to go be with an unfaithful woman, the reason is because like God is Hosea and we are Gomer. Like we are the unfaithful ones, and this is this visible representation of like, you know, just how God is with us and his faithfulness and his fidelity. And so to be invited out of our own kind of biological impulses, which are what they are, they're neutral, like they're neither good nor bad, they just are what they are, they're impulses.
Yeah.
And they're biological. But to say you are more than your biology, there's something deeper to you, something more true of you than your body, like that's a whole nother, that's a different ball game.
Yeah.
Altogether, right? It's like, yeah, you're right in some level, like sex is sex and it's propagation of the human species.
Yeah.
And it becomes this very real way for us to grow in our fidelity, to put on fidelity, to put on the virtues of God. It's this practice, it's this asceticism, it's this training for becoming like God. It's not like you're such a skank for, you know, sleeping around. It's just like you're not acquiring the virtues of God.
Yeah.
Which is faithfulness and fidelity.
Yeah. Who is your father? And if you're going to be a child of God, you need to look like your father.
Yeah. That's what it's about. Like it's not a biological issue.
Yeah.
You know? Like it's this transcendent one.
And because it's not just a biological issue, it's also not just purely a consequence of willpower. You know, It's not like we achieve this life just by working harder. You know, because it's not just the ascetic life of the church. Like the church has like the ascetic life that it offers, but also the sacramental life of the church that it offers. And like, because, you know, these like biological instincts, right? The way that death is really at the core of all of this, right? Like, yeah, because again, you could even think about the biological instinct, like lust. It's a response to death. You know, like you will die, I will die. If we don't procreate, the species will die. Therefore, like there's this kind of innate biological urge to make as many little humans as possible so humans continue to live. You know, like right? I mean, all like that's what it is. Like death, you know, like Nelas, Panayotis Nelas will talk about this, right, in Deification in Christ, that, you know, like Adam and Eve sinned and therefore death comes into the world, and now we as kind of their heirs, like we die, and that's why we sin, because we have this kind of like underlying death anxiety. Like we're going to die, therefore we need to make more of us. Like there's a risk that I will starve to death, therefore I will steal food from somebody, right? Like even like Fox's thing is like a death anxiety on some level. Like I need to go and get those chickens because, you know, otherwise I'm not going to eat. I have to provide for my family. Like I think there's layers even to his mania about being a hunting animal. And you can't unwind that just by trying harder. Like the Christian life is not just to sort of like suck it up and kind of like white knuckle it. I mean, like it's this combination between the activity of God in us and our activity, the life of God colliding with our life. And it's, like Nellas will say, like it's Christ who breaks this cycle. This like death leads to sin, which leads to more death, which leads to more sin. And it's Christ who dies and is risen. And it's Christ who allows us to like put, to put Christ on. That's what we do in baptism, right? That's what we do in the sacramental life of the church. We actually like take on his sonship, and we can look upon God as Father. And then that's where the ascetic life of the church comes in, to sort of like lean into that and perfect that and grow in that. Because
Which
if
is
all
such
Christian,
a much more beautiful vision than just being like, keep it in your pants, boys. It's such a much more helpful narrative to like, to want to grow in virtue, to want to be better, instead of just like, well, I can't do this because it's bad. It's like, well, it's not, it has nothing to do with it being bad. It's just, it's cut off from life. It's outside of the Father's house. It's not the way that it's done in God's family. And so this is about becoming one of his children. It's not about being a good person or a bad person. Father Stephen Freeman says it all the time, right? God did not come to make bad people good. He came to make dead people come to life.
Yeah.
And like that to me is like, oh, so like you can be abstinent and dead. You can be like sober and dead. You can be what? So there's nothing necessarily inherently good about abstinence, because that's not the issue. Our problem is not moral; it's ontological. It's the question is whether or not we're alive, not whether or not we're good. And I think to your point, you see that my wife, I think, like brilliantly pointed this out. She was like, the whole thing is this kind of this cycle between like nature and the humans, right? Like they, again, just assuming that animals are just being animals. Like let's
in the
say
movie,
that.
you mean?
In the movie, yeah, the animals are just being animals, and they take and eat the chickens. Like that's just a normal animal behavior on some level. But the humans are so threatened by it that now they want to kill nature, and they want to destroy the thing that's threatening them, right? So it becomes this cycle of violence. And how the animals keep stealing, and then the humans up the ante and not only try to kill the animals, but then they unearth like this tree. They like destroy nature, all out of this desire to keep themselves alive. And it's like this ongoing feud that we have with like the world around us somehow.
Yeah. Yes. And it's interesting, right? The difference between like death and death anxiety, right? Because if you look at the plenty, like the three human characters, right? Like Fox stealing a couple of chickens and a couple of geese and a couple of pints of cider is not going to bankrupt those guys. Like you see these moments where he walks in and like he sees all the cider gleaming along the walls, right? Like Fox is not actually a threat. Yes, with the rat. I love that, just the persistent snap and the switchblade, tossing it back and forth in his very French striped shirt.
Yeah.
But like they're not a threat, right? Fox is not a threat. And yet this death anxiety that we have, like that is a disproportionate response. Like he took one goose and one chicken or whatever it is. Therefore, I'm going to level nature and kill his family. I'm going to kill his children, right? I'm going to kill his wife. I'm going to kill everybody because he stole this one thing of cider. And you can see there that cycle, just kind of like it, and it ratchets up with every turn. It goes from one goose to like wiping out a species almost. Like it's this, it escalates. It like you escalate from, creation to Cain and Abel, right? It's like this cycle has a way of escalating in a hurry. You just go from 0 to murder like that.
Great job, guys. We did
it. 0 to murder in one generation.
Yeah, it's the fulfillment of it, right? It's the fulfillment of everything that's there. And what's, I think like what becomes interesting to me, even from like, again, Fox's perspective, and I think from my perspective too in life, that like what drives this cycle in me is the idea that something is somehow lacking, right? That like that I don't have everything that I need. It's like that death anxiety again that you're talking about. Like that really does fuel so much of it, like whether it's, we don't have the right job, or we don't have a good enough car, or we don't have in some cases, right, you do need a better car. Like our air conditioning isn't working in our car, so we need to figure that out.
In Phoenix, you need that.
Yeah, we will die, because we will die. It's not fear anxiety, it's death anxiety. It's like actual death threat.
Yeah.
But so much of that idea of something lacking, I think, does begin to pull us, which is why I even feel like that, the prayer that we sing, or we say before dinner at my house, we sing, rich men have gone poor and have hungered, right? But they that seek the Lord shall not lack any good thing. They shall not want for any good thing, is kind of another way of putting that. But if we see that we have everything that we need, then we're not driven to take and eat. We're not, right? Like that's the big sin right out of the gate, is like take and eat, because something's lacking in you. You're like, you don't have everything that you need. God will not give you everything that you need. You need to take and eat for yourself. And there's a song that we've been listening to a lot lately in our homes. Did you ever see the Muppets movie, the Jason Segel and
the newest one? No, I haven't seen it. Yeah,
it was a few years ago. There was some other one that Tina Fey and Ricky Gervais were in.
Yeah.
And at the very beginning of it, it starts with like this song of everything is great, everything is grand. I got the whole wide world in the palm of my hand. Everything is perfect. It's falling into place. Like it's just this great song. But the refrain of it is like, I've got everything that I need, and it's right in front of me. And like, there's this, the way that the movie presents it is almost this kind of like naivete, right? Like, the whole world is out there, but like, until they know that, they are perfectly content with what they have. You know what I mean? Like, there's this truth of like, you do have everything that you need, and it's right in front of you.
Yeah.
But when you perceive the lack, like that's when we go kind of stir crazy,
Yeah. Yeah. The difference, right, between having this Eucharistic gratitude, this kind of like faith in the Lord, and that I do have he's placed this in front of me for a reason, as opposed to the dreams. Like, what if I could eat that fruit, even though God told me not to, and I can literally eat anything else that I want to, right? I think that's a really beautiful like meditation, just kind of on that sense of lack and how we respond to that lack. Whether we, do we succumb to the lack? Do we kind of like have this heart full of gratitude, or do we begin sort of dwelling on other things? And I think the question for us too is, when we begin identifying those things that we lack, like we can even be wrong about that, because I think like that's kind of the initial motion of Fox's life. Like he perceives this lack. He's got this wife. He's got this beautiful new home. He's got his son, right? He's got a stable job. Like on some level, he's doing just fine. And yet he feels something within his heart. And he interprets that as, I need to go and I need to do one last job, because his diagnosis of the problem is, I need to, like we said before, be this wild animal who's going to go and take and hunt and eat. But I think the question that like Fox begins to realize even is like, is that the thing he was actually lacking? Because like it's like two levels, right? We can perceive something lacking in our hearts, which leads to this agitation, but we might be wrong about what we're looking for. And you think about this even in like a smaller sort of way, like when there's clearly a restlessness in all of our hearts. If you've ever had that sort of situation where you're talking to somebody and the conversation pauses for a second, and you go and you like instinctively go to your phone, right? And like, That's how you kind of like, because clearly like there's something you need in that moment, and you're kind of reaching to get it there. And I wonder, like, are you diagnosing the need properly? Like, is the phone the thing that is going to scratch that need? Like you're there standing face to face with somebody. Maybe you're afraid of yourself. Maybe you're just kind of longing for more and deeper connection with this person. And so you're kind of like using the phone as a proxy to satisfy a need that you're actually misdiagnosing. And I think that's one of the things that like Fox struggles with. Like he diagnoses the need as kind of this animalistic sense, but it turns out that he's wrong. Like he didn't need to go and hunt more chickens and geese and stuff. Like he actually just had this kind of this malaise and this instability that was there. Like that's the thing that needed to be healed. And he finally he moves beyond when he becomes this actual father figure, and he's willing to die for his family. Like that's when the need sort of goes away, right? Like so often we can feel these needs, but we misdiagnose them, and it ends up leading us in self-destructive behavior or addictive behavior or whatever it is, because we don't actually know what we're trying to fill. It's like like if emotions or these inklings, these stirrings are kind of the light on the dashboard in our car, like we're not taking the time to look under the hood to actually figure out what's wrong. It's just like, nope, I need drink, I need porn, I need drugs, I need gambling, I need whatever, like things to numb it, or sort of like superficially, I need more time to scroll, on my phone, as opposed to like what's actually like moving underneath the hood. Like, what are you actually lacking right now, and why are you lacking that? Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Because like at the end of the day, right? What ends up, where the movie ends, is they're in a supermarket, and that means that like the thrill of the hunt is gone forever, right? Like they will never need to hunt again, and somehow Fox is fulfilled in that, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like it comes, the reason that well, so in the very beginning of the movie, when he finds out she's pregnant, he's like, "You're simply glowing." Well, before that, he's like, "You're simply glowing tonight," and she's like literally luminescent in like the movie, which is just it's so Wes Anderson and like so great.
Yeah.
But like, he doesn't glow when he finds out. He's like,
yes,
and so there's kind of this sense where you see that he's like losing this excitement and losing the whatever. But at the end of the movie, when he finds out she's pregnant again, he also glows, right? And so I wonder if there becomes this like, what he felt that the hunt gave him was this like meaning or purpose or whatever. And what he comes to realize, kind of like what you were saying with like the Go for Broke rescue mission, is that actually it's the creatures around him. Because when he gives that toast at the very end, like, I'm standing here with the most incredible creatures, or what, like, I can't exactly remember what he says, but it's something along those lines, right? Of like, basically like, I now realize like, this is what gives me meaning. This is what gives me value, is like my relation, especially like when he bridges that gap with Ash and accepts him for who he is. And he's like, the cape looks good on him, doesn't it? And like, there's just these really like beautiful moments that they finally have toward the end of the movie where, Ash is a part of the family fully. He's such a great character too. I'm just different.
I'm an athlete and I'm different.
Yeah. There's so many good things. I like different. Because I've felt that way before.
I have no words.
Like, there's no need for him to hunt anymore, and yet he gives the most beautiful and heartfelt toast there as he stands with like these creatures that he loves, and he glows. And it's like, oh, all of a sudden you begin to see like he has transcended that nature and moved into this relational mode of being that like fulfills him in a way that the hunt never did or could. It just left him more hungry and more appetitive and more ready for the next taste of blood that he could possibly get. But now he's glowing, he's radiant.
Yeah, I like that. I hadn't put together that symbolism. I that totally clicks for me now, like why it ends in a supermarket. Because it's no longer about the thrill of the hunt. It's now about like the joy of providing for those he cares about. And it's like the joy of just eating with them, right? And feasting with them, and the joy of their company which is, it's kind of like this really wonderful, this kind of Eucharistic sort of kingdom vision at the very end, right? It's like, none of you will lack. None of you will lack. Like, there's a seat at the table for all of you. And I realize we've had our struggles, and I realize I've been a jerk to you in the past, but like, here, sit, take, eat. And they kind of like finish by dancing, like there's this very kind of ecstatic, just kind of joy in the moment, and joy, rejoicing in the plenty and rejoicing in their company. That is super beautiful.
This movie, man, I love this movie so much. It's so good. I think maybe one of the last things that I kind of want to touch on, and I do feel like it's a really important theme that we've kind of talked about in a lot of ways, is just this idea of unity in diversity. You get the three bad guys who are all rich, who are all British, and all have names that begin with B, right? Bogus, Bunsen, Bean. And the two things that we're told about them is that they're rich and that they're mean. Like those are the two things that we're told about them. That there's nothing really unique about them except for the fact that they have different gluttonies, right? Like different gluttonous appetites. but they're still just all gluttons, right? The one eats the goose pies and the other one eats only chicken and the other one drinks only cider. And
12 chickens a day.
It's all just so gross. All of it's gross. But they're all these mean, nasty British men that team up against a very diverse team of animals, right? Their whole purpose of coming together at all is just to destroy them. And I think we've seen this in other things, like we talked about, like with Star Wars, that what is beautiful about the animals is that they're united in their purpose. They're united in their heart. They're united kind of in this way of being, right? And they each bring something new to the table in a way that nothing else does. And I think in particular, you see that in that scene where he's saying all of the Latin names.
Yeah.
You know, whatever. It's so good.
Here's your talent. Here's what you're good at. And we need you right now because we can't do this without you.
And demolitions expert.
Yeah. That one was out of left field. I love that. Demolitions expert. It's like Call of Duty or something. That was the Badger. Yeah.
Dude, Bill Murray is like, he's just always perfect in these movies.
Yes. He was born to play Wes Anderson characters. Yeah. It's a really beautiful image, right? And it's such an image of the church, right? Like, this actually came up in the last script that we did for Be the Bee, before we filmed it with Father Andrew, but we were working on the script beforehand. And because you get these, Paul talks about the church as the body, right? And he talks about like the diversity of the members of the body so much, like the arms and the ears and the eyes and the elbows, right? I mean, like that's what a body is. A body is made up of all these things, but we're united in that common faith and that common purpose. And like, so he can talk about like, there's neither Jew nor Greek nor whatever, because we are one in Christ. And yet we are also so many in Christ. Like some of us are apostles and some are teachers and some are preachers and some are this. And like, yeah, the unity of the body is much more that kind of the unity in diversity rather than unity in homogeneity. Which the three grumpy British guys mention. And it's like, yeah, and we've talked about this before, and it's kind of worth thinking about it again. Like, how often does that actually play out, though, in the life of the church? Like, do we prize the wrong kind of diversity? Like we kind of like sometimes we lose sight of our common focus and our common faith,
right?
And we kind of like we sort of tear down and we get into stupid theological disagreements, right? And then on the other hand, we have this kind of like very narrow, like clericalism sometimes in our communities. Like, look, nope, you can't have a leadership role in this ministry. Like, you must be this seminary trained to join, or you must be this old to have a voice at the table, right? Like, if you're a kid, like, you don't get to actually be a full member of the community because diversity of age is not a thing that we're okay with. Like, I feel like we that's our theology, but yet we kind of turn that theology upside down in practice, and like, we do more of the 3 B's than we do this ragtag sort of assemblage of animals that are united in one purpose. Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I feel like you hit the nail on the head kind of in the way you're talking about like the sort of that like that very narrowed vision and like the narrowed vision of clericalism, because we do, I think, so often kind of like give like the other members of the community, like, I don't know that we imbue the same dignity on all members. Like the dignity that is given to each role, which is really sad. And what I love about that moment with Fox saying the Latin names is there's like a dignity that comes with it. There's like this empowering and this like charging and this commissioning and this like, thing that happens that when clericalism is running amok, like it just isn't a thing that happens.
Yeah,
which is sad. Like you become maybe a way of I'm trying to nuance this. Like it becomes this like and I think people feel it, like it becomes almost this like parasitic way of using somebody in a church ministry rather than this like empowering, kind of dignifying, like you are, I don't know any of the Latin names, but like whatever, you're
Yeah.
this thing and you are made to do these things.
Yeah.
And like,
And you're indispensable.
no one else can. Yeah, exactly. Rather than kind of, I feel like sometimes the way we do it are like, well, we need people to teach Sunday school. Who's going to teach Sunday school?
Yeah.
Because that's just a lesser ministry that we say is important and we think that we should have. But really at the end of the day, there's not a whole lot of dignity given to people in those roles.
Which is a different riff on that sort of lack and gratitude that we were talking about before, right? Because like in that moment of crisis, Fox doesn't look around and wish that he was with other people, right? Fox doesn't sort of like identify some scarcity in that cavern. Like everything we need to get out of this mess, we have. Because I've got you, Badger, and I've got you, Rabbit, and I've got you, Mouse. Like everything that we need, we have right now. And I think sometimes like as communities, right, as families, whatever it is, we kind of like, oh, I wish I had like some more big donors. I wish I had some more talented people. I wish I had, like that if I was drafting a team, like that's not the person that I would pick to lead that ministry. Like, as parishioners, like I wish I had a different priest. And it's like we have this like scarcity sort of mentality as opposed to this gratitude mentality. Like God has planted us all here in this family, in this community, whatever it is. Like God's brought the badger and the rabbit and the mouse and the fox and everybody, and we have everything that we need. We have everything that we need, as opposed to
could be better.
Yeah,
could be better. The the thing that's just like, I'm even thinking about this now too, like the gratitude thing that you said really resonated with me, because I've been to churches before where it's like, they, at the end of this Sunday school year or whatever, like it's just like a really kind of like paltry thanks that happens at the end. Like, we just want to thank all of the teachers. And like these people just gave like 9 months every Sunday to teach your like bratty kids things that you don't have time to teach them.
Yeah.
And
that
like
you don't know sometimes.
Or that you don't know or care to teach them. And here's a $10 gift card to Starbucks. And to me, I'm thinking like it's just dawning on me, I think, like how just like imbalanced that is.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't know, man. Like we don't see the people kind of that we're at the table with, like we just see like what's wrong. I don't know.
Yeah. And I think this happens at every level. Like, I think I think sometimes this happens in church work, at parishes, at archdioceses, whatever it is. Like, I think sometimes, especially when it comes to the people who are members of that body, right? Who are the hands and the feet, who are doing that work, this sense almost that like, they're not good enough, or this sense that I wish we had different, or the sense that like, they're the enemy because how dare they draw a salary, or like, there's just kind of sometimes this, it's weird and adversarial rather than like, if it's really going to be a body, it's going to be symbiotic, right? Like our life exists in common, which is, I think it's such a beautiful word, like symbiotic, right? Like our life exists in common, and our life sort of like, we need each other in order to live. Which is what like the church as a body really is, as opposed to that's dead weight.
Well, and even like you think about like, let us commend ourselves and one another. And then at the very end, we say, and our whole life, rather than, and all of our lives, right? That commonality, it's like this shared kind of thing that is being given a singular life. And you even get that, I think, at the end with Fox, like we were talking about this kind of Eucharistic thing, and I was trying to find the exact line that he says, and it's really sweet. He says, they say all foxes are slightly allergic to linoleum, but it's cool to the paw. Try it.
Yeah.
They say my tail needs to be dry cleaned twice a month, but now it's fully detachable. See? They say our tree may never grow back, but one day something will. Yes, these crackles are made of synthetic goose, and these giblets come from an artificial squab, and even these apples look fake, but at least they've got stars on them. I guess my point is, we'll eat tonight, and we'll eat together. And even in this not particularly flattering light, you are without a doubt the 5.5 most wonderful wild animals I've ever met in my life. So let's raise our boxes to our survival. You know, like it's just this the beautiful, just like shared kind of us, like the usness. Like we'll eat together, and this is for our life, like our survival, our getting through the thing that we just overcame, and that we will continue to overcome together.
Yeah.
And I don't know that we feel that at church. I think it feels like, again, like this kind of, we're all there to kind of individually get our whatevers, you know, but to, you know, to come, at least I don't, maybe I should speak for myself. I feel that way often, that like I'm there individually and fail to see myself as part of the larger body. But it would be pretty amazing if we did, you know, if we looked around and we're like, you are without a doubt the most wonderful 100 people that I have ever had the pleasure of knowing, you know?
Yeah.
And we'll eat together.
And it might not be the meal we wanted. It might not be the sort of fancy meal, right? Because like that first toast that he gives, he's got a champagne flute in his hand. And that last toast he gives, he's got a juice box in his hand.
Wow.
I think there's something really poignant even about that. Let's raise a box.
Yeah.
You know, there's like the irony of toasting with a juice box, you know, but it's fine because that's not what matters. Like what matters is that we get to share the juice box.
That's good. I like that. I also like juice.
I'm thirsty now.
Yeah. Well, fantastic, Mr. Fox. So good.
Good stuff. Good stuff. So, shall we top 5?
Yes. But before we do, can I read my favorite line from the entire movie?
Oh, yes, please.
It comes from Coach Skip. Basically, there's 3 grabbers, 3 taggers, 5 twig runners, and a player at whack-bat. Center tagger lights a pine cone and chucks it over the basket, and the whack-batter tries to hit the cedar stick off the cross rock. Then the twig runners dash back and forth until the pine cone burns out and the umpire calls hot box. Finally, you count up however many score downs it adds up to and divide that by 9.
As delivered by Owen Wilson.
Yes. To which Christopherson responds, got it.
And then he nails it.
Yeah. All right, let's top 5.
Let's do it. So what are we doing for the top 5 this week?
For the top 5, we are doing the top 5 movies with animals as lead characters. So I am going to go with number 5. One of my favorite movies growing up ever was the movie Milo and Otis. Did you ever see that movie?
I did not. But you like it.
It is such a sweet little movie about a dog and a cat that become best friends. And the cat gets lost and the dog goes after the cat. And, I think I lost you. Maybe not. Maybe it'll come back to me. But yeah, that's pretty much it. It's from the 80s and there's just a lot of like voiceover. That's how the whole thing is played out. And I'm just going to keep talking because Steve's gone. I don't know if anybody else can hear me. Am I alone in here right now? Hi, Hasiel. Oh, okay, great. Have you ever seen Milo and Otis, Hasiel? It's good. It's a good movie. Steve's back. Steve.
I don't know what happened. My computer just froze and then it disappeared.
I'm so glad you're back. I just kept talking. I just kept talking about fair. Milo and Otis. So what's number 4?
Sorry. That was weird because everything seized up. So number 4, I'm not sure if this is what you had in mind when we came up with this top 5, but I'm going to go with Jaws because I do think that the shark is the lead character in Jaws, the first one in particular, and beautiful score. Some of the best like lines ever. Like, I looked into its dead eyes, shark's eyes like a doll's eyes. Jaws is just
a fantastic. Was in that movie.
I looked into its eyes, dead eyes.
Check his eyes. Look at that shark eyes,
like a doll's eyes. So yeah, I think Jaws is like just beautiful horror, right? Like by budget limitations, they didn't show the shark very much, which actually made it that much scarier because this like character that is on everybody's minds and hearts is just kind of lurking off on the surface. Your imagination is playing tricks on you. You finally see the shark at the end. I'm going to choose to, wedge this movie into this top 5. So I'm going to go Jaws, number 4.
Okay, for 3, I'm gonna go with Zootopia. Have you ever seen that movie?
I have seen Zootopia.
Real good, real good. Yeah, I love that movie. Just again, it kind of plays with this like nature versus transcending nature kind of thing, which is just a fascinating idea to me. We probably could have had a very similar conversation, in fact, that we had today around that movie. I feel like there's a lot of those different kinds, the same themes that show up in that movie. But that movie cracks me up, particularly the sloths and the hello, how are you doing today? Good.
It's very slothful.
I'm good. And like this the idea of a sloth talking to a rabbit is hilarious, because it's like,
that's fair.
The rabbit's like, let's go.
Wrap it up. Let's wrap it up.
Nah. Okay.
I like that. That's a good choice. Zootopia, number 3. Number 2, I was torn between, should I do Babe? Should I do something with a sleep? Nope, I'm not going to do Babe. I want to do Jurassic Park for number 2, because again, I believe that the animals are the leads in this movie as well. I think the Tyrannosaurus Rex in particular is the sort of hero. He's the Deus Ex Machina at the very end that saves the main characters. Jurassic Park, the original one, with Dr. Grant and Ian Malcolm, and the lawyer who gets eaten while he's on the toilet by the Tyrannosaurus Rex, who is the lead character of this movie.
And Samuel L. Jackson.
That's right. Hold on to your butts. He smokes his cigarette down all the way to the filter and then some. Newman of Seinfeld fame.
He's just,
you didn't say the magic word. So again, I'm not sure if this necessarily fits within the letter of this top 5, but I'm going to insist that it fits in with the spirit of this top 5. So I'm going to go Jurassic Park, number 2.
I'll allow it. And then finally, number 1, I am going to say that I choose
Pikachu.
Lion King.
It's really great when we do visual gags on an audio podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Nobody knows what's going on. To which Hasiel just says top quality content. Yeah, you're welcome, everybody. You're welcome.
Yeah.
All right. But I'm gonna go with The Lion King. That movie is immortalized in my heart forever. Like, I remember seeing that movie back when it came out in 1994 and seeing it in the theaters. And that being, I think, probably the first movie that I ever cried at. I think, and now I cry every movie I watch pretty much. So it's fair. I'm like, God, it just got real dusty in this room. But that one, I remember it really resonated with me, even from just like a very young age. I remember getting the CD for like the soundtrack. I started calling my pop Mufasa, and like it just was like a really, really moving movie to me. And there's so many great moments in there, like when Simba, basically again running away from who we really are, and is recalled by his father. And there's this great line that Mufasa has, and I always think about it, where he says to Simba, he says, "You are more than what you have become."
Yeah.
And it's like, oh snap, dude, you are my son and the one true king. And it's like, oh dude, it's just good. Anyway, I could watch that movie probably anytime. I still really love it. I did not watch the live action one though, because it kind of scared me a little bit.
That's fair.
I'm not gonna lie. Like there was something unsettling about like these live looking creatures that have no facial expressions. It was just like, oh,
defeats the purpose.
They all have no personality.
Yeah, basically. I also want to commend you on the Lion King Good Place mashup that you did, because starring as Simba was definitely Jason Mendoza for a couple of moments there.
What happened?
Well, as you were doing your sort of like Mufasa, and then Simba's like, "Oh, dip!" Like that was totally Jason Mendoza.
Hillboy.
Donkey Doug, who's also his dad. Yeah, that's a good one. Lion King. I like that for number one.
Well,
I don't know if we finalized what we're doing next week.
I don't think we did. But
So
we'll tweet that.
yeah, we'll tweet it. We'll put it in the description to this when it gets posted. So look for homework. And that's it. We're a little over time, but that's okay. Christian, any last words for the podcast, not for existentially?
Yes. Banana. That's it. That's my final word.
Good night, everybody.
Goodbye.